to a quad.
Talking about that, because let's be real. On the old WNBA front, this is the most relevant the league is going to be for the next couple of weeks. Because we can be honest, during a couple of weeks, Caitlin Clark is out injured. Doesn't matter what happens. Does not matter what happens. No one cares.
The WNBA is once again in a full-blown crisis, but forget the usual drama about bad refs or rough plays. This time, it's something way more disturbing. Stephanie White's recent update on Caitlin Clark's injury status just sent shockwaves through the basketball world, and the shaky uncertainty in her voice. That's the real red flag, telling us this whole situation is far more serious than anyone in the league wants to admit.
This groin injury, and how much of an absence do you expect from her beyond today?
Yeah, late last night. I think it's very much a day-to-day thing, how she responds to treatment. I stay in my lane and let our strength and conditioning and our physical, our AT staff do what they do best. But yeah, I found out late last night, and then we'll treat it day to day.
Back-to-back a factor at all with that?
I mean, I don't know if it's a factor from a physical standpoint, from an athletic training standpoint. Certainly in my mind, it is. But at the same time, she's shown that she's tough and she's a quick healer. So
here's the grim truth that's become impossible to ignore. The relentless, blatant physical targeting of Caitlin Clark all season long has finally, predictably, taken its toll. And now, the WNBA's biggest star is sidelined with an injury that supposedly nobody saw coming. Or let's be real, nobody in power wanted to see coming, even as it was staring them right in the face.
How much patience do I need to have before I can start going nuclear? Because I am getting very frustrated with what I am seeing. To everybody that said Caitlin Clark didn't look like herself, salute to you. For everybody that said Caitlin Clark might be going through something, salute to you. Clearly, you all saw what that person that stands there like this can't see. We all saw what was going on. Man, something's not right.
When Stephanie White finally stepped up to the mic to address Caitlin Clark's sudden groin injury, fans weren't met with the confident reassurance they desperately hoped for. Instead, what we got was a head coach who seemed genuinely blindsided, fumbling through vague responses that didn't just raise questions, they screamed them.
She reported yesterday, like, her pain in the left groin.
it had to have been at some point during the day because they took her out yesterday, for the MRI. So I'm not exactly sure. I didn't hear about it until we heard from our training staff last night.
And with the MRI, did it show a strain or anything, or?
I don't. You'll have to ask our training.
White's timeline reveal last night was seriously alarming. Clark apparently felt pain and had an MRI on Wednesday, yet White herself didn't even hear about it until her training staff finally reached out later that evening. Let that sink in for a second. This isn't how professional sports organizations typically manage injuries, and it definitely feels like someone was being kept in the dark.
Rushed her back. And within rushing her back, she re-injured that same quad. And then you rushed her back again. And then within rushing her back, she was forced to put pressure and put stress on different areas surrounding that quad. That leads us to our most recent groin injury. I don't need a degree to think for myself. If you've ever been to the gym, you got some chest pain, next thing you know, you got some shoulder pain. Why? Because instead of using your chest muscle to do the exercises, you compensate and start using your shoulder too much.
What made White's press conference even more unsettling was her repeated, almost apologetic admission of being completely out of the loop. She literally said, "I'm not exactly sure. I didn't hear about it until we heard from our training staff last night," painting a crystal clear picture of a coaching staff, or at least its leader, being shockingly uninformed about their star player's critical condition.
She's dealing with a lot herself, right? Stephanie White. Of course, she's missed, 2 games so far because of personal issues. So I don't necessarily know what her personal issues are. Hopefully it's nothing like DeWanna Bonner's. But nonetheless, she's dealing with some things of her own. So maybe it's a tad bit difficult to keep up with every single thing that happens with her players. And then, of course, she got this news late at night. So I don't know what time this could have been. It was posted early in the morning. So, you know, she's probably just now getting into the facility and trying to figure out what's going on with Caitlin. Let me see the MRI. What happened with the MRI? They probably caught her right before she can get all this.
The current chaos surrounding Caitlin Clark's injury is taking a concerning turn, especially when you compare it to how her previous quad injury was handled. Back then, head coach Stephanie White offered a level of transparency and detail that's conspicuously absent now. During that earlier setback, White gave clear updates, outlined timelines for Clark's potential return, and offered insights into her recovery process, giving everyone, fans, media, and the team, a solid understanding. This time, it's just a cloud of uncertainty, offering zero comfort or clarity, and that stark lack of concrete information strongly suggests a much more unpredictable, or perhaps far more serious, underlying issue.
When she says you have to ask our training staff, are any of us really going to get the opportunity to actually talk to a training staff member? I don't think that actually is going to happen. So like what Stephanie White is doing right there is basically saying, I can't tell you, even if I could tell you, it's not going to be announced through me. It's going to be announced just how they announce everything else. They're going to announce it through a press conference. They're going to announce it through a press release, a tweet with the information. These organizations are very private, especially with, you know, the injury information, because people go crazy.
Clark's groin injury didn't just pop up out of nowhere. This is the painful culmination of months of systematic physical punishment that the WNBA has blatantly failed to address. The timing is particularly infuriating, considering she had just endured that absolutely wild game against the Connecticut Sun, where she was poked in the eye by JC Sheldon and then blindsided by Marina Mabrey. Since returning from her last quad injury on June 14th, Clark has been navigating what can only be described as a complete nightmare on the court. Her shooting has cratered to historically bad levels. We're talking just 1 for 23 from three-point range over her last 3 games. And Clark's season-low 6 points against Seattle, where she actually recorded more turnovers than points for the first time in her career, now looks less like a shooting slump and more like a deafening warning siren that the league simply ignored.
Clark does not need to play another game until she's completely 100% healthy. If that means she has to miss multiple weeks, so be it, because you don't want to get into the habit of her rushing back from injuries when she's not fully healthy. And we know if one nagging injury can lead to another nagging injury. So the best thing that the Indiana Fever can do, regardless of what Caitlin Clark wants to do, you have to protect your star, your superstar, because she's going to want to get on the court. But until she's 100% healthy, she does not need to play another basketball game for the Indians.
The numbers don't just speak, they scream about how Clark has been treated in the WNBA. Documented statistics confirm she's been the target of an utterly unprecedented number of flagrant fouls. Get this, 17% of all flagrant fouls in the WNBA this season have been committed against one single player, Caitlin Clark. And when a staggering 80% of those fouls come from just one team, that's not a coincidence. That's a sickening pattern. The physical toll has been building since the very first games of the season, from Kennedy Carter's blindside body check to the Chicago Sky's systematic targeting, all the way to that eye poke and shove sequence against Connecticut. Clark has absorbed punishment that would have ended careers in previous eras. What makes this situation even more maddening is that the players responsible for these outright assaults remain unpunished in any meaningful way. Marina Mabrey, who delivered that devastating body check after Clark had already been poked in the eye, received nothing more than a technical foul that was later upgraded to a flagrant. She faced no suspension, no real consequences, just a measly fine and the green light to keep targeting the league's most valuable player. It's a disgrace.
Real talk, a lot of y'all reckon she coming for him. At the end of the day, y'all can't stop nothing, bro. Y'all trying to beat her up and bruise her up and take her out the game and injure her, bro. We know what the motive is, dog. Like, don't nobody like that. I don't vouch for that. I don't like that. You hear me? Y'all not leading. Look, y'all need to get that out y'all heart, cause that's some deep demonic stuff. The way y'all thinking and how y'all moving and having y'all little meetings and all of that and wanna plot against this woman and her teammates that have her back. Y'all better leave her so Sophie Cunningham.
The reaction from Clark's fan base has been swift, brutal, and absolutely unforgiving. Social media has exploded with calls for her to ditch the WNBA entirely, with countless fans arguing that the league doesn't deserve her and never has. One frustrated fan perfectly captured the rage, saying they wouldn't blame Caitlin Clark if she decided to quit the WNBA and play in Europe. In fact, they'd applaud it and encourage her to get as far away as possible. And if that move means the end of the WNBA, then let the league sink. This sentiment captures the fury of thousands who have watched their favorite player get systematically abused. The viewership numbers themselves are shouting just how ridiculously dependent the WNBA has become on Clark's presence. When she was injured earlier this season, nationally televised games saw a staggering 55% drop in ratings, plummeting from 1.81 million to just 847,000 viewers. Fever's ticket prices crashed by 47%. She gets technical fouls for being assaulted, while her attackers face minimal consequences. The message is painfully clear. The WNBA is more interested in coddling the feelings of veteran players than protecting the safety and career of its biggest star.
Finding out this morning that we probably need to hold out again today. It's just, it really is a day-to-day thing. And I think for us, making sure that we're prioritizing her long-term health and wellness. It's anybody who's had some of these types of injuries understand that sometimes it's a process. She's a quick healer, and she's been doing everything that she can to get back on the floor. So, we just want to make sure that we're hypersensitive to the big picture.
Perhaps the most infuriating aspect of all is the mainstream sports media's deafening silence on Clark's treatment. While they were quick to fall over themselves celebrating her achievements and the rating explosion she brought, they've been conspicuously absent when it comes to the systematic targeting she faces. The very same media machine that hyped the Caitlin Clark effect has largely ignored or actively downplayed the Caitlin Clark targeting effect. And when veteran players and analysts dismiss legitimate concerns about her safety as mere favoritism or special treatment, that's just insulting. This isn't about race or making an exception, it's about protecting the athletes who genuinely drive the sport forward. Tiger Woods wasn't protected in golf because he was special. He was protected because the sport recognized that its biggest stars deserved the security and fair play to perform at their highest level. It's called good business, folks.
But I'm gonna keep saying it. Something is going on. I don't know what it is, man, but that's uncalled for. And we can see it. I don't know if we need to look into the committee, with the higher up players, the veteran players. I don't know what we need to look at, but we need to look somewhere because
Stephanie White's uncertain, almost evasive tone when discussing Clark's injury needs to be a seismic wake-up call for WNBA leadership. When a head coach can't get straight answers about her star player's condition, when that player is being systematically targeted by opponents with little to no consequences, and when the league's biggest draw is openly considering overseas opportunities, you don't just have a basketball problem, you have a full-blown existential crisis. The WNBA is staring down a crossroads. Either they stand by and watch their most valuable asset get worn down and broken by opponents who are more interested in intimidation than actual skill, or they finally acknowledge that protecting star players isn't favoritism. It's not just good business, it's basic human decency.
Let's look at the WNBA and Caitlin Clark. Who is set to make WNBA players more money? Is it Angel Reese, the author of the Me Bound? The Me Bound that she's now going to copyright, and she's trying to get all the rights to it so she can glorify the Me Bound? Basically a made-up stat for someone who can't hit layups? No, it's not Angel Reese. Does Angel Reese help add to the legend that is Caitlin Clark? For sure. Caitlin Clark is going to print money.
Caitlin Clark's current injury status, day to day with no clear timeline for return, isn't just an update. It represents everything fundamentally wrong with how the WNBA has handled her treatment from day one. While players like Marina Mabrey and JC Sheldon continue to play without any meaningful consequences for their blatant actions, the league's most transcendent talent sits on the sidelines, potentially questioning if this entire league is even worth the physical punishment she endures every single night. The fans see it with crystal clarity, even if the league conveniently doesn't. When Paige Bueckers calls the pressure on Clark inhumane, she's not just talking about media expectations. She's talking about a broken system that expects a player to perform at an elite, record-breaking level while absorbing abuse that would sideline lesser athletes indefinitely. It's a disgrace.
No secret that Caitlin Clark has been struggling in her shooting since coming back from injury. She had that big game right after the initial leg injury where they played the Liberty, they beat the Liberty. She had 30-something, Sabrina had 30-something. It was a fantastic game. But since then, she has been really struggling from the field. There's been reports of her maybe having her migraine issues again. There's been reports of her in interviews she's been coughing a lot and kind of sniffling, was she sick? And now she is out for tonight's game because of a groin injury. And even in her post-game interview the other night, she said, it felt good coming out of my hands and then it just wasn't going in. They feel good. They feel like typical Caitlin Clark shots. She doesn't feel like anything is different, but then they just weren't going in. And then we saw this at the end of the game the other night. It almost looked like it was her leg and ankle again. She gets up. Erica Wheeler comes and helps her. She's doing some stretching. We're like, oh, is it the ankle?
Clark will eventually recover from this groin injury. Just like she bounced back from her quad strain, her shooting will undoubtedly return to form, and her assist numbers will climb back to their typical jaw-dropping levels. But the real question here isn't when she'll be physically ready to return. The critical question is whether the WNBA will finally be ready to protect her when she does. The league's abysmal failure to adequately punish the players who have targeted Clark sends a chilling message that will echo far beyond this season. Stephanie White's uncertainty, the complete lack of clear information, and the undeniable pattern of physical targeting that directly led to this moment all point to a league that has utterly failed to protect its most valuable asset.
Missing significant time. I would assume that the WNBA is still on track to make pesos, which is great. That's great. But if that happens, there's going to be an expectation to maintain it. There will be an expectation to figure out a way to turn this monetized turd into actual dollars. It's kind of hard to do that when the only star in your league is constantly on the bench. And one of the potential reasons that she's constantly on the bench is because of the increased physicality that she's forced to deal with every time she's on the court. We have already seen what happens when Caitlin Clark
will recover and hopefully return to full strength as quickly as humanly possible. But until the WNBA actually demonstrates that it's serious about protecting all its players, especially the ones who drive revenue and viewership into the stratosphere, fans will continue to question whether this league truly deserves the incredible talent it has been blessed with. The clock is ticking, and the consequences of continued inaction extend far beyond just one player's injury status. The WNBA's very future may well depend on how it handles the return of Caitlin Clark, and more importantly, how it ensures that her next injury isn't caused by the exact same systematic failures that led to this one.